Well, hello and welcome to the Jann Arden podcast. I am Jann Arden. Things are a little different today here in the studio. I have had a few technical difficulties. Let me just start by saying they took my car into the shop this morning. That was 4 hours ago. So I was supposed to be home with my car in the country. Instead, I am at my friend Nadine's house. I am on my cell phone. And oh my gosh, Nadine, I need your password again to get into this phone so that I can see my prep.
It's a real high-tech operation
but
over
anyway,
here
this is
at
what
the Jann Arden
It's
podcast.
laughable, but this is real life. So anyway, I'm on my phone. Max, where are you?
I'm at home right now, but I deeply identify with you just calling up a random friend and saying, I'm going to come over and do some work. This is my entire life. Literally yesterday or the other day, I had an hour to kill before I was going to a movie, but I really wanted a nap. So I texted my friend Adam, whose condo was near the theater. And I said, can I just pop by, just have a little nap at your place? I just need 20 minutes. And he said, not this time. And then I went to the movie theater early, had a great nap.
Max Kerman's our
I'm very
guest.
comfortable
He
asking
is
these
the
questions.
frontman singer, one of the very prestigious members of the Arkells. And it is a band that we need and love in Canada right now. They are as Canadian as a plaid jacket. No, I was trying to stay
Jann
away
Arden.
from the normal memes of like maple syrup and back bacon and all of those things. But Max Kerman, you haven't been with us for a couple of years. It was way back when. Caitlin, when was it?
I think it was pandemic time. Pandemic time, 21, I think.
Yeah, it was October 30th, 2021.
Well, the reason
yes,
that
it
we're
was.
talking to this amazingly talented man is that he has a brand new book coming out called Try Hard. I'm telling you, more awards are in store for you, Max. I just right out of the gate, I want you to tell us about this book. What inspired you to write Try Hard? What sort, without, giving it away completely, because we want people to rush out and buy this book, which is going to be out April the 22nd. And go tell us all about Try Hard.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you know this conversation, Jan, where people say you should write a book, and in my case, it's like you're in a rock band. I'm sure you have wild stories to tell about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and everything that goes on to like life on the road. And I always say like, oh, we don't really have any of those. We're kind of like a pretty boring band in that respect. But whenever no, we are. I think we're a hardworking band, but there's not a ton of that kind of story in our biography. But whenever I start telling people about like, oh, how the band got together, how we think about marketing, how we think about money, how we think about touring, how do we get better, how do we write a song, like all those conversations, people's eyes light up. And I've always thought that's really interesting because that's the thing I like to think about the most. So I never intended to write a book. I never thought I had it in me, to be honest. I was like, I'm the last person that should write a book. I feel like I have like some version of ADHD where I can't really sit still very long, and writing a book requires like a lot of patience. Or, as you know, it's like you have to, the editing process, like all of it is like a long-winded thing. It's not like sitting down at the piano and like, okay, I'm going to try to bang out a song in the next 15 minutes and see how that feels. But once I started writing, I just started with like 1,500 words. It's like, can I do 1,500 words on how the band got together? Or how does my evolution in songwriting, how does that occur? And then I was like, oh, this is actually kind of an enjoyable way to start my day. If I can wake up in the morning, go to the coffee shop near my house, have a coffee, and then just try to get to 1,500 words. How will that feel? And then I was like, oh, this actually feels kind of amazing. So that became a part of my day for like the next year, and a part of my day that I really want to protect now because it's maybe my favorite part of the day. So the book is about creativity. The book is about teamwork. The book is about things I've like learned being in a band, and they're all kind of told through stories of hopefully entertaining things that I've encountered.
What was the first story that you wrote down? What was the very first 1,500 words? Do you recall?
Okay. Well, it actually, a lot of times authors talk about having to rewrite the first chapter, and I totally get it because you might not be sure what your book is totally about. But I think when you're writing, you have to kind of go as directly to the truth as you can. So the first sentence opens with, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. This is the thing entertainers and artists and creatives rarely say, but it's very obvious to me, is that for all the altruistic sounding mentions of community and resiliency and the power of the human spirit, all these grandiose things that artists like to say when they're like winning an award, which I go, what they're not saying is, I'm just kind of doing this for my own entertainment. Wow. And Jan, I look to your career. And that's what it has to be. And so if you start with what entertains you, then all those other things end up being true, because you end up making all these great connections along the way. You end up working with an editor, you end up working, with the marketing department, you end up meeting people that have maybe read or consumed your work, and you connect with them on a very human level. But I think that's where the book starts, is just like, find the thing that doesn't make you lazy. Find the thing that like gives you endless energy, because if you, because I kind of think of myself as a very lazy person unless it's the thing I'm into, and but that doesn't really feel like I'm doing work at all. So I think if you can find the thing that doesn't feel like work, then you can
Caitlin
do a lot of
Green,
it.
over to you.
Enjoy
I know
and
you got
happily.
questions.
Well, I was going to say, so in Canada, and I think it's interesting that you brought this up, that you really like to think about the business and the marketing and like how to make money doing this. And that's the piece that in our market, I think a lot of people get challenged by, because, it's smaller. So it's like, how do you wrap your head around, I'm this creatively inclined person, but how do I make a buck doing this in Canada and have some longevity to my career and not just sort of be a flash in the pan? Because I was interested in creative stuff when I was younger. And if I had $1 for every adult or guidance counselor or teacher who just said, do not do this, go get like an MBA, you should try to become a lawyer, there's no money in the arts in Canada, I mean, I could retire. So if someone's listening and they're creative and they're like, well, how did Max from the Arkells do it? What would you say?
Well, there's a kind of a chapter on that. Well, the first thing is, I'm actually terrible at sending or thinking about money. I'm very, very bad at it. So if we go for dinner and like, oh, everyone send Caitlin $40, I'll have to get my business manager to send the e-transfer, because I don't want to look at my bank account. I just can't do it. It makes me uncomfortable. But I'm of sort of the belief that if you can find people that share a common idea about money, then, and in our case, it was always like, whatever we make, we just have to invest back into the band. Because if you keep on putting on a great show and making great albums, and you're not cheaping out on it, and then there's an opportunity for repeat customers. Because I think a lot of bands go, oh, I have some money, let's put it away. So, and again, this is a very sort of privileged position to be in. But I think because our band has always been aligned on like, let's not just like take the easy money grab, and let's do things that we actually only care about, I think that's been really helpful, number one. And number two is that maybe this is overly optimistic, but I feel like if you keep your eyes peeled, there's like ways to sort of help support the art, I guess. So for instance, like in 2010, we got invited to do a secret show at Canadian Music Week. We played at the Rivoli in downtown Toronto for like 100 people. It was a 2 a.m. gig. Oh, were you there? Okay, so Okay, so basically we decided to do a bunch of covers, a bunch of Motown covers. My dad went to university in Detroit. I grew up with Motown around the house. And I said, look, guys, instead of us doing our own songs, let's do a couple of our big songs, because nobody knows this really at that point anyway. And then let's throw a bunch of Motown songs in there. And that ended up becoming like sort of the big buzzed about thing at the Canadian Music Week that year. Then we got another offers to do other festivals, South by Southwest, North by Northeast, the Much Music Award after party. Well, let's throw in those covers. Then we started getting booked for these private events. I know Jann makes a killing doing private events, but we started doing we started getting these offers, and from different groups, like the ophthalmology convention, or some accountant convention, or whatever it may be. Like, let's throw those in. And because we have this sort of side of our business that we happily engage in, because it comes from a real artistic place, that's like, it's not just us doing something we don't want to do. These are songs that we love. These are songs that we grew up playing. Then we can kind of walk in to, a corporate event and happily play, and those pay great. And then and whenever we do those things, we have a great time doing it. But also it allows us to go make a record with our favorite producer. That it allows us to hire an extra lighting technician on our tour. And I was like, oh, can we get the lasers for this big show? Oh, well, we did that stupid corporate, which we had a great time doing. And now we can get the lasers. So I think it's also important for anybody listening who wants a career in the arts, is that everybody has their own income model. Everybody has their own career. Everybody has their own strength. So whatever I say in my book is just a representation of what I happen to like. But hopefully in reading, you can go, oh, what's my version of that? Like, what's my version of the thing I happen to like, and how can I keep this thing going?
Yeah, and I think it's really important for so many Canadian creators in every line of work to share that kind of different piece of the business, the corporate gigs, or, you know, if you work in radio, then maybe you're doing voiceover work or all that stuff that you don't ever learn about this, but it is a way to say, hey, you know, are you necessarily going to be Lady Gaga? No, but it's not Lady Gaga or become a lawyer. You can do this, and there's lots of in-betweens, and you can make a nice living for yourself and not have to like eke out 8 hours a day in an office job if that's not how you're inclined.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think a lot of it is just about kind of keeping your eyes peeled. And also it's like, you know, Jann, I got to say, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast, it's like, I see your temperament and the way you like to work, and it's really inspiring to me. I go, oh, could I be somebody who's in a band, who tours, who likes to have conversations with people? Oh, maybe, is there a TV show? Is there a book? Oh, now there's a novel. It's not just a book about my life. You know, it's like, and you do these things that, it's so inspiring. And it's like, and because you don't box yourself in, and that's actually another chapter, is like, somebody asked, like, oh, what's your job? I'm like, I guess I'm a musician. If I meet somebody on a plane and they didn't want to know what I do, I'm like, well, I guess I'm kind of a musician, but I just want to be like, I just have these cravings all day and I just want to go toward the craving. And I think this idea of being boxed in by like, I am this,
You
can
can't
be kind of limiting
you
sometimes.
can't paint the same picture.
I know.
Time after time after time. I mean, someone like Van Gogh, God bless him, was painting over masterpieces because he'd run out of canvas or wood, or he was painting pages in like books. Like he'd go through like the amount of work that he painted over because he did not want to just do one thing. So I'm not really, I tell these girls all the time, I'm not really great at anything. I'm not the greatest singer or the greatest writer or I just like being creative. And people talk about having a purposeful life, and that's what I see what that you're doing. And we don't have to actually draw, you know, a line in the sky that singer and stand under it. Like you're art. You're an artist and you create art and you do things, and that's what makes us limitless. And I think that's what builds character. Why did you title the book what you titled your book?
Try Hard, Creative Work in Progress. Yeah, it's titles are hard, you know. But I was like, in the beginning of the book, I talk about how try hard is like a pejorative. Usually, it's like, oh, that guy's such a try hard, you know, and it's sort of meant in a demeaning way. But I kind of was like, no, anybody who gets anywhere kind of has to try hard. And I don't know if my job is a hard job, but it's
And
a
you have
job where
to
you have
fail.
to try hard to kind of keep going. And you have to fail. And it's also always a work in progress. And, you know, I was thinking about like, how do I want to end the book? Because, you know, I had a good feeling about where I wanted to start the book. I was like, what's like the last sentence in a book like this, just about sort of my own creative process? And I realized like the final word, spoiler alert, is I wanted to end on the word today. I just wanted another word because the only thing that really matters is today. So like everything, like you don't do these things to win awards. You don't do these things to like be able to like tell a story about this great thing you did. You only do it in service of what am I doing today? How am I making today interesting? How am I, you know what I mean? So it's, I don't know. I think there's a lot of sort of like thematic ideas that come with writing the book that you don't even know what they're going to be until you start writing, which is kind
What
of
do your
the
parents
point
think
of
of
the act
this?
itself. They love it. They're kind of shocked.
Say,
My
thank
mom,
God, honey, he finally got a
she's a
real
very-
job. Like I think writing is perceived as quite academic, and music is perceived as a hapless dreamer that is going to be bedding down a lot of different women and drinking whiskey. So there's something about going into the literary world that gives you some kind of, you know, like a training or some kind of proper, this is quite proper.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. My mom is a very measured mom. She's not like, oh, my son's the greatest. She's not like that. She's always sort of shocked if anything goes well. She's sort of a very sort of like, okay, we'll see how this goes. So when I told her about the book, she's like, why? Like, why you?
As Jann's mom would say, why not you?
Yeah. Why you? And so my mom's a high school teacher, though, a retired high school teacher. And my dad is a sort of semi-retired social worker, but he runs his own little small business, which I learned a lot from. And that's like one of the chapters is about my dad and how he sort of invented this job for himself. And that's what being a creative person is. Even though he's in sort of the mental health field, he invented this job and he wanted to kind of figure out how to work his own hours, how to meet new people, how to put on these events for continuing education for healthcare professionals. That's what he does now. But that's one of the chapters in the book. It's just sort of like witnessing my dad as a young person, like when I was like, 7 years old, seeing him leave his job, his and then starting his own business, but needing to save money because he was like, okay, I'm gonna work from home. We're not getting a second phone line. So during the day, if the phone rings between 9 and 5, you have to answer the phone. Hello, Leading Edge Seminars. How may I help you? And then they'd say, is Michael Kerman there? And they'd be like, 1 second. Dad. but that even though on the surface has nothing to do with being in a band, it has everything to do with being in a band, because you have to make the money work. You have to like bring in your friends to help you with free labor, in his case like his family members. It's like that's how the beginnings of anything goes when you're in a pursuit that you really love. So anyway, to answer your question, Jan, they're
Did
pumped.
you let them read
they
it
get a kick out of
before?
all this.
Obviously, before it's coming out, they had a privy to sort of like the galley copy when you first wrote it.
Yeah. They were, it was a rare emotional moment for my mom, because there's a chapter about my mom in there and the way she was as a teacher, because she was a special ed teacher at a downtown Toronto high school, and I kind of thought about the way she interacted with the students who were coming from like troubled homes in some cases, or just had a harder life. And I think like just being around that, like I'm from a family of teachers and nurses, and that always puts everything in perspective when you're on tour and you're meeting people and you're like, and the job that we get to do is like such a joke, in comparison to like that hard daily work.
Sarah, I know you have questions. I always hog everybody. Like whenever I listen back to these podcasts, I'm like, Jesus Christ, you didn't let anybody ask anything except your stupid ramblings. So Sarah, I want you guys to be able to ask, because we always have lists that we never get to. Like whenever I say, well, that's it, that's been 51 minutes. And I'm like, Jesus, I asked 3 questions and the rest of it was me rambling. Anyway, Sarah, go.
The chapter list, which is the chapter about your mom, by the way, just because I'm curious.
What would be the name of it?
Yeah.
Great, you've made him leave.
Over here, 1 second.
I saw a Vince.
No, I'm here. Okay,
because I don't have the actual book, so
Vince,
you can hold
Vince
it up.
Kerman, but that's
to all our YouTubers.
Oh,
yes, please.
yeah, here it is. There you go.
I love it too.
I love that cover.
Yeah, it's a great cover.
Mm-hmm.
What was the inspiration behind the cover?
Something that anybody, even if you didn't like the book, you'd like to have it on your coffee table.
Yes.
when you're in the bookstore, it goes, what's that thing over there? But that's me and my daily. Oh, Andy Warhol. I like that camp. So there's me riding a bike. There's me at a coffee shop. There's me playing basketball. There's me reading the paper. There's me on stage.
It's like evolution, Max.
What is my... That's right.
It did kind of look like,
I know,
it reminded me of that.
So my mom's chapter is being useful. So that's because, she's been a very useful member of the community. And so that's just my thoughts on that. But the Vince Kerman chapter, do you want to know about that?
Yeah, I was like, who's Vince? Because that's not your dad's name.
No, it's not. So when I was in grade 7, I was assigned a project by a teacher by my teacher, Miss Janes. It said, interview somebody in the community that has a job that you think is cool, that maybe you'd want to have when you grow up. So I all the other kids were like, oh, interview my parents' friend who's a dentist, or like the fireman around the corner or whatever. And I was, oops, shit, sorry about that.
He's texting me again.
I broke the rule. I was like, those, yeah. So I opened the phone book and I went to the back page in the white pages area, and I called the Toronto Raptors front office because I was obsessed with Vince Carter. I'm Vince Kerman.
I was like, hold on a second.
Yeah, Vince Carter. And so I was like, maybe I could speak to the general manager of the team, Glenn Grunwald, because I was obsessed with the Raptors. So I just picked up the phone. I said, can I please speak to Mr. Glenn Grunwald? And they're like, okay. And they put me right through to his secretary. And I said, I need to interview you, Glenn, for a school project. And then they're like, okay. So they set me up with an interview, and I got to interview Glenn Grunwald. And then he invited me down to the newly opened Air Canada Center, and he took me on a tour. And the whole time I'm thinking, this is so amazing. I'm getting to talk to the general manager of the Toronto Raptors. How fantastic is this? And that instinct, I think, has served me very well over the years, because you have to not be afraid to ask sometimes, especially when you're in this line of work. So 20 years later, literally 20 years later, so that was 1999, 2019, I kind of had the same idea. The Raptors had just won a championship, and their head coach, Nick Nurse, was seen getting off the team plane at every game with a guitar on his back. He was learning how to play guitar. So they had just won the championship. Our show the next week after the parade was at Budweiser stage. And I said, and so I just picked up the phone. And I said, Nick, would you want to come play on stage with us, play Stevie Wonder, Signed, Sealed, Delivered? And he had never been on stage before. He said, okay. So then Nick comes out on stage in front of a sold out crowd, 16,000 people, and we play Stevie Wonder together. This is the week after the Raptors win the championship. So like Toronto is like, has been
On
drunk for
fire.
like months.
Yeah.
And that sort of led to this really great friendship with Nick. And I'm going to see Nick on Tuesday. He's the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers now. And he's like really interested in music. I'm really interested in sports, and I'm still friends with Glenn Grunwald. So it's a chapter about sort of how to thoughtfully, shoot your shot. And I wouldn't be able to tell you that hundreds of thousands of times where I've been told no, and that also happens all the time. But you have to have I think if you can be forgetful, if you can have a very short memory, that probably is a good thing.
Where I was going with this, like looking at the chapter list, and I feel lucky. Like I feel like Max, when I was growing up on the radio, you were growing up in your band. We like both of our kind of careers had like the same pace. I mean, you shot out of nowhere. Holy crap. Arkells was everywhere really quickly after that show at the Rivoli in 2010. But yeah, there's a chapter called Max Meet Max, and I figured that maybe has some reflection on personal growth over the years. So
actually, it's not. It's a very literal chapter. Sorry. Max Meet Max is the time we played at Coachella, and it's a chapter about songwriting because I saw Max Martin backstage at Coachella. Max Martin, if you don't know, is the person who's written and produced all the great pop songs from Britney Spears, to Backstreet Boys, Kelly Clarkson, Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, Robin. Like,
he's the best.
The list goes on, and no one recognized him. But I've been obsessed with Max Martin because just as a student of songwriting, and so I ended up talking to him for like 20 minutes, and he doesn't give any interviews. I think he's given like 3 interviews over like the course of his career up to that point, and so it's a chapter about what I've learned songwriting, not only with the band but also with outside songwriters, because I think that's one of the reasons why our band has been able to sort of evolve over time, is that we are always looking for like who's the next producer or the next sort of collaborator that can help keep the music fresh, because I think a lot of bands might have short careers only because they're only working with each other. And I think we've made deliberate efforts to try to get like kind of outside education, which I think opens our world in a good way.
Your vibe is very yes, I will say overall. Like you have like a positive energy, and even just the stories you've told on this podcast where you're like, oh, I just wanted to like call up Nick Nurse, and then like he said yes, and then you said yes, and it's like a bunch of people being really excited and saying yes to things. And do you think that's an attitude that you sort of naturally have?
Yeah, I think that is probably my only talent.
Well, it's a good one to have.
Yeah, I'm so bad at so many things, and there's so many technical things I'm not good at, and like I can barely use Pro Tools. I like have sort of given up even on gear.
That surprises me.
No, I hate all of it. I hate all of it. I hate all of it. Yeah, even that's a little complicated for me, Jan. But what I can offer is like enthusiasm, I think. And I think there is a momentum to a life in the arts and a creative pursuit that is like so underrated and so important. Because it's one thing to have a bunch of like people that can technically do things, and that is so important, but you have to be able to sort of communicate with each other and also sort of push the ball forward, because when you lose momentum, I think things can become harder.
And I also think people want to be around someone who's enthusiastic, and they want to be around someone who says yes to things. And so there has to be a certain part of anyone's career, but definitely in the arts, where you're like, it just comes in handy to be the kind of person that people just want to hang out with a bit, or at least isn't like weird to hang out with. I think that would probably be helpful.
Totally. No, I mean, we think about that a lot with our touring crew too. It's like everyone's so talented. Like if the lighting designer, actually, Jan, we share a
he
lighting
tells me
designer,
stories about you guys. I won't get into that on this particular conversation.
That's for his book. No. But like, so everyone has to be talented and care about what they do, but also it's like, are you kind of good to be around? And I think that goes, and that's just like all kind of like just workplace 101 stuff. But yeah, human 101.
I always tell people whenever they ask me about going into the arts or how do you become a singer? I'm like, well, do you sing? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, you already are a singer. Now you just need to find yourself a job. So you're a singer already. And the second part of that answer to them is that talent is all fine and well, but it's so subjective. and that's why there's so much music out there. So talent is maybe 10% of the equation. And I'm not kidding. I think 90% of it is sweat equity and persistence. And you have to be a shameless self-promoter. And it doesn't matter if you're writing a book, and this is a perfect example. You've written this book and now you need to go out and convince people to buy it. It's not like, how do I become a writer? Well, you're already a writer. Now you just have to sell what you're creating. Because that's, and sort of what I'm getting from you is the fiduciary monetary side of art is not something that you're particularly comfortable with, and it's not your aim. But yet, in order for you guys to keep creating art, you have to have money to do it. And so that requires leaving home and going to do things. So how do you reconcile, obviously it's not something you're completely interested in, but how do you balance that? I ask artists that a lot, of how do you balance the monetary side and the creative side?
There's a couple ways. I think one is I feel proud of the responsibility that I have for the guys in the band and the people that we work with, that this is like a business that people want to do. And in order to continue doing it, we have to like work hard. So that sort of baked into it. I also think that I place a lot of trust, and we're very lucky. In the beginning,
Wow.
Nick, our bassist, was our accountant, and Mike, our guitarist, yeah, because Nick's dad was an accountant, and Nick is very good with the money. So I have memories of like after the show, if we had more than $500 cash in like the pencil case, we have to like go to the bank at 1 a.m. and make the deposit. No, seriously. And Nick was very diligent about that. And Mike, our guitarist, is a great graphic designer. He does all of our album designs, and he was designing all of the merch and our posters. Mike literally sent us a poster design this morning. So a lot of that stuff is like, it feels like a family business. So it's like, if everybody's like all hands on deck, like this isn't just about going on stage and rocking the guitar. It's about like, okay, how do we save money? And like, we don't hire a third party social media person. Like I just do it. So I think there's like, if you can kind of get used to the fact that you're going to wear a lot of hats, I think that's just like good. And also just like, don't get too comfortable with like fancy things. It's like, I don't fly first class. If we have to share a room, whatever, great. I don't care about any of those. I genuinely don't care about any of those things. I just want to be able to comfortably keep making art. And the other thing,
I only fly first
Jann's
class,
like,
and I am not flying economy, and that is the only diva-ish thing I do, and that's part of anyone I know. But
listen,
that's
you're much more
absolutely
famous than
not
me,
true.
though.
And it has nothing to do with fame. I think it has to do with being a brat, probably, and just I just can't. It's part of, it's built in anyway.
Listen, you made your money back in the 90s. It was, times were different.
Yeah,
you're sitting on
funny.
A boatload, I'm sure.
So. No, keep going. I want to hear the rest of this.
And I want to tweak something you said, because I agree with everything. But the part about being the part about just the word shameless self-promoter.
But I'm referring to TikTok. When I see TikTok, feel like there is a shamelessness, which isn't necessarily a negative statement. You just have to, okay.
I completely agree.
Yes.
No. And what I was going to say, and it's actually related explicitly to TikTok and this modern world of marketing that we're in, I think the trick is you have to figure out, how is it that you want to interact on the medium? Do you want to like start doing dances because like that's what you think you have to do? Like, I guess I'm doing dances, or I'm lip syncing like stupid like audio quotes, and like, because that's what you see. So it's like, or can you use it as a medium just to tell your own story in the way that you think you want to tell your own story? And like, can you use it in a way that is funny to you, or that just feels authentic to you? So I feel like that's been a big turning point in the last few years, especially for like anyone who's like a millennial or older. It's like, how do I do this thing in an earnest and authentic way to who I am? And then you can have some fun with it. But it did take me, and it's still like a daily lesson. Like, how do I actually want to communicate on this app if I want to get the word out? And I do want to get the word out because I want people to, buy the book for no other reason than I can write another book. I want people to buy tickets to the show for no other reason than I want to play another show. Like, it's all sort of in service of being able to keep doing it. So then it's a matter of just like, how do you, and a lot of people who aren't Gen Z just go, fuck it, I don't care anymore. I'm not even going to touch it because it's all intimidating. It makes me feel hollow. It makes me feel like a shameless self-promoter. And to that, I would just say, like, just if there's a way to just interact with it honestly, that is actually probably the best plan of attack.
Yeah, that's because I have my background in radio, and it was when I started in radio, social media wasn't the beast that it is today. And then it became this bigger and bigger deal. And I did watch a lot of people, and myself included, like, we struggle with how much do you want to feed the beast of social media, and where can you find meaning in that? And also, like you said, the shameless self-promotion aspect of it all. But I feel like I appreciate the message from you that it's like, find something that's authentic to you and that I think the audience wants from you. That's the part that can be really challenging, because you can, someone, I could really love doing this, but if it's never gaining any traction, then that sucks for you and you feel like you're wasting a lot of time. But you're also not going to be able to, I don't think, really strike the right chord if you're inauthentic to yourself on social as well. And for bands now, you see TikTok is this huge driving force for music as well, all of a sudden. And do you guys feel like you've had those experiences with record labels and stuff where they're like, oh, we really need a TikTok hit?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, but predicting any of that stuff is like almost impossible now, because there's so many, like, look at like our friends Mother. It's like a song from 2010 became a TikTok hit in 2020. Like, would anybody in the world have predicted that? Like, no. But that's sort of what makes it amazing. I'd say that I think it's about balance too. It's like we spent the last few weeks in LA making a new record, and it was so like such a deep creative time for the band, and it felt so good. And also writing the book, putting aside 3-4 hours in the morning, just like work on like quiet contemplative thinking and writing is like, then it allows you to kind of go, okay, I'm going to think about TikTok for the next like half an hour at 2 p.m, and I'll just like work on some stuff. But I think if you're only doing the sort of surface level, vapid self-promotion on TikTok, that's when you want to, think about a new career.
When you're monetizing those likes, and we've certainly talked about that here, when you're monetizing how many people view your video, how many likes you have, I mean, it's dangerous territory, but obviously that is not a huge focus of your career. But however, it is part of it. And, record labels count on a social media presence to get the word out, to sell concert tickets and things like that. I wanted to ask you, so we see guys like Mick Jagger, coming out on the Oscars a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago. And, he looks great. I mean, he's in his 80s. The Rolling Stones continue to tour, even with the death of Charlie, their drummer. And they're going forward. How do you see the Arkells? Really, you guys have been on the scene for a couple of decades, but where do you see yourselves in the next 20 years? Will you ever pack this in? Is it something you're going to go forward? Do you ever think about what the end of it looks like? Like you said, you've been very contemplative writing this book, and you've probably thought about a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think I'm really grateful for the band in that I feel creatively free. And that's what really keeps it exciting. And I think a lot of bands go, do we need to do this anymore, when they don't have anything left to say? But I think with us, it's like each tour feels ambitious and different from the last. Each record feels different from the last. And there are examples, and I think about this a lot, of like, who are the great musicians who have like aged in interesting and beautiful ways. I think about like Paul Simon. Paul Simon had his first hit in like 1960. His biggest album was Graceland, 1986. Arguably his biggest. Think about that for a second. And then he did Rhythm of the Saints in 89. So I'm thinking about like, who are the artists that continue to create and just make meaningful things? I think about David Byrne, right, in Talking Heads, but he's gone on to write, musicals, and he's made different like collaborations with St. Vincent and Brian Eno. So I think about, the guys in the band who are equally as ambitious and who want to keep pushing. And I'm not particularly worried about it, because, I think there are great, Springsteen is another one. It's like, I know Jake Clemens, who's Clarence Clemens' nephew, who plays sax in the band now. And it's like, those guys like come ready to go. It's like the set list changes every single night. It's like Bruce is calling out audibles on the fly. And I go, that seems like an interesting way to live, right? So I think if you, again, in the way I mentioned, and Jann, I really mean this earnestly, like when I think about you, it's like, who are examples of people that do things in a meaningful and interesting way? Like, is there something I can model myself after? And in the music world, it's people like Paul Simon or David Bowie or Bruce Springsteen. And, you know, right here on this podcast is you. It's like someone who's able to sort of like keep everything fresh by, I'm going to write a book and then I'm going to go do a talking tour and then I'm going to do a music tour and then I'm doing a covers album. And I think one spurns the next, right? Because if it's just one thing, you might get burnt out. But I think if you're able to kind of keep it interesting
I
and however that works for
literally
you, then you'll be
don't
okay.
even think about it. I am not kidding you. I spend very little time plotting my next. I'm just like, oh, I think I do this. I mean, poor Bruce Allen, my manager, he must just think I'm a nut. But
His head's spinning.
I just like doing stuff, and I think it does keep you young. And I think especially if you can not be precious about your appearance or, oh, I look weird in that or that outfit's weird. I don't give a shit, except I made one comment one time about I didn't like my double chin, and I've never lived it down because of a certain angle of a camera. And I'm looking at this interview and I caught myself going, you are not going down that road. So while I'm on that, do you ever have moments of personal self-reflection where you look at yourself? Because I'm interested in a man's point of view. Once again, thinking about a person who's just spent months and months and months being a critical thinker in a coffee shop and writing down, what is your perception of yourself physically and your appearance? I don't think we ever ask men that.
No, you know, it's a great question. Okay, actually, so related to TikTok and related to just like the rhythms of culture, and I've always believed that, like, you know, one of the reasons why the Beatles were so popular is that they were born just before the baby boom. They're all, you know, 5 to 6 years older than a bunch of the people that ended up loving the Beatles, right? So I think there is some correlation between being 25 to 30 years old and being like the darlings of 18 to 21-year-olds. I think there's like that is just like the way culture works. When you're an 18 to 21-year-old, you want to look up to artists that are 25 to 30, a little bit older, but not too old. And I've been thinking about, I'm like, oh, like when it comes to like an 18 to 21-year-old, like I think our new album is going to be the best album we've ever made. And I want 18 to 21-year-olds like to think that too. But then I imagine them looking at my face and going like, you could be my dad. Like you're too old to be that. Like just my face. So I've been reflecting on that and and it doesn't matter if you're, I think, a guy or a girl. It's like once you know, are in your late 30s, I'm 38 now. It's like, you know, that opportunity to connect with that next generation, I think just goes away because you're not of them. And I totally get it. So I've been thinking about that a little bit in terms of like, oh, even though I feel like a 21-year-old, like if someone like looks at my face, like I'm clearly not 21 anymore. So that's a realization I've had lately.
So good. Like
I just shaved for this interview though. So
yeah, I'm just wondering if
you'd see me 2 hours ago.
Men do consider that. I mean, we know that men are doing more surgical procedures as far as appearance and getting calf implants and I don't know, buttock. No, I'm not kidding you. They get
Calf
these
implants
to have their calves look bigger, or pectoral implants, what I would imagine would be the comparable to a breast augmentation of some sort.
Huh.
Someone said Drake had pec implants. I don't know that I believe that, but that was a rumor that circulated for a hot minute.
Yeah, I
think
men
are doing
men have a much easier time, but maybe I'm being really naive because you are saying something that it has crossed your mind to think about, are these, and you're not pertaining to, you know, 18 to 20-year-old women. You're talking about that group of individuals, men and women, young. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just talking about youth. I'm just talking about youth culture. Yeah, just it's like when those formative times when people get into music and fall in love with the bands that they will love for the rest of their life. Like that is like scientifically proven that it's like between the ages like 16 and 22 is like that music. And I know for me too, it's like that's the stuff that still resonates with me. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Like when you go see Our Lady Peace, you're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
In Calgary. No, you go, Sarah.
What was the hardest story that you told in the book? Because I feel like writing a memoir is kind of like it's an exercise of looking in the mirror in a sense.
Well, it's not quite a memoir. It's funny. It's like it's sort of in between a how-to and a memoir. It's sort of like in the middle. So it's not that kind of book. And because I wanted to make it fun to read, and I want there to be like lessons snuck into just like the fun rollicking stories of being in a band. Yeah, but what were the hard stories to tell?
Or a lesson you learned that you shared in the book. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah, I think so in talking to my editor, we are like, Arkells are known for sort of our involvement in the community and just sort of being an accessible band, and I love that about us. And so the editor was like, oh, there should be something about just like your community give back. And there's something so cringy and
Not at
terrible about
all.
like
I think it
talking about,
inspires people to be
what your
philanthropic.
like
I
what
really
good.
do. It's important.
Yeah, well, this is it. Okay, that's interesting you say that, because I also agree with that. But in writing about yourself, it's like, what are instances of like of good deeds that are worth retelling? And so it's actually in the chapter about my mom. Think about my mom and like what she means to her students made me think about, okay, what can we do with our platform? And so the first story is we built a basketball court in a really hard done by neighborhood in Hamilton. We raised the money and we had a big celebrity game, and members of the Canadian women's basketball team showed up, and Nick Nurse like coached on the sideline, and Matt Devlin, the Raptors announcer, he like announced the game, and all these kids from the neighborhood got to come play on this beautiful new court with a glass backboard and resurface finish. And it was the day before our big Hamilton show. This was a couple of years ago. So that was like, okay, that's a thing that we can do just to show that like we care about the neighborhood. The second thing is we had this story about a social worker at McMaster Children's Hospital reached out because she was working with a family whose newborn was going to die. The newborn had a brain tumor, and they didn't have much time left. And the parents were huge Arkells fans, and they played the Arkells for the baby. The baby was like 6 months old. And so they want to bring the baby to the show. We were playing in Kitchener down the road. So it's a story about like the family coming to sound check and playing all these songs that, of course, aren't about that, but then like My Heart's Always Yours, or There's No Quitting You, or All Roads Will Lead Back to You. Like every song kind of just became about the family. And Tim and Tony in our band were new fathers at the time. So it was just like a really emotional afternoon. And I never think about our songs being that comforting thing for anybody else. And whenever anybody tells me, I'm like, really? Like, I'm kind of shocked because I don't think of
If I
myself that way.
had a quarter for every time someone called Indie 88 and said, "Oh, that's my wedding song," to
I
an Arkells
know,
song,
I
it'd
know.
be
And it's
crazy.
so, but then, so then it's sort of like the chapter sort of ends coming with the realization that, you know what, like the songs do mean something to people, and that's what a gift that is, if for no other reason than to feel like connected with
And they
somebody
mean
else,
something
with connected with a
completely
stranger. And
different
like,
than what it
isn't
means to
that a
you.
beautiful part?
People take on
Totally. And that's
their
great. That's so
own
great.
thing. It has nothing to do with your intentions as much as we as writers want to think that. They have their own agenda. And they're gonna, that's a hill they'll die on too, is like, this is what this song means to me. Um yeah, it's really special what you guys have done. And those things are really important to talk about, and don't ever be reluctant to
Mhm.
speak to the good things that you do and having a good heart. I think we've been so paralyzed by you know, virtue signaling. And I've talked about that before on the show, is that no, you
Mm-hmm.
can talk about good things that you've done, and you can blow your own horn, and you can cheer yourself on. Those things are
Mm-hmm.
really important. So don't ever lose that, because you don't need to be quietly, giving with a warm hand under the table that nobody knows. And be loud about it, because it actually makes people go, oh God, if they're I need to do something too. People need to know about those things. It doesn't have to be quiet. Why are the bad things getting all the attention? Good things need to be loud, and you need to be pounding on your
Mm-hmm.
drum. So we'll pound it for you if you're uncomfortable.
No, I appreciate you. It's so funny. I feel so much better talking about. I have such a terrible memory. I don't have that many like vivid childhood memories, but I do have a memory of listening to Good Mother in our family's 1986 Toyota Camry on the way to my grandma's house, and my mom reaching back to hold my sister's hand. And I still remember that. And that's one of the
Well,
few
that song
memories,
was about
vivid
the
memories I
devil.
have
So
of my
see, there
childhood.
you go.
And
No, but that song is having a true
Yeah,
resurgence
it's
right now,
no,
isn't
it
it?
was I thought it was the dumbest song in the world.
Mm,
Dumbest song in the world. So no, I think things like that
wow.
are so special. And it's minivans are my O2. Like they're my O2 stadium in London. Minivans minivans, I owe them a lot. I feel like I should write to the Chrysler Corporation, and they should have a minivan named after me.
Yeah,
Listen,
let's get a Jann Arden model going.
Max,
Let's go.
It's Van Arden, let's be honest.
Max, you are inspiring a lot of people with your new book. This book is already out because it is April the 25th right now. Isn't it, girls? Isn't it, Max?
It is.
I just
Sure
wish
is.
you nothing but wild success. I can't wait to see what you do next. You are a very young man. You're doing like a wonderful work. I can't wait to hear the new record. I don't, is the record going to be out around? Okay, we got a ways to go on that.
No, we got a ways to go.
Well, listen,
on
if you
that.
ever need a
So
backup
we're
singer,
just getting our ducks in a row.
I'm there
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you. Yeah, if you ever need a
Oh,
backup singer,
first call. Love it.
I'll wear the
Montreal?
outfits. I can. Caitlin can sew me something. But yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. It's so inspiring and important, and I'm glad that you took that time to write down cool things. Anyway, continued success, girls. Do you have any last questions or thoughts before we bid Max adieu?
Okay, I'm curious about this one. So, Max, we do this with guests where we ask them how they take care of themselves and their mental health. So, is there something that you do that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, of course. I start. Okay, I have a lot. It feels like I'm pretty laid back, but I actually am quite vigilant about my routine. It also helps that I don't have any children. But I get the newspaper delivered to my house in the morning, and so I start my day reading the Globe and Mail with a coffee. I usually go to a coffee shop and just bring the paper with me, and then leave the paper there. And I just love that part of the day because I'm away from a screen, so that's really good. I walk a lot. I think it's so important. And when we're on tour, I'm just like always, movement is good for me. And so I don't know how many steps a day I get, but probably between 10 and 20,000 steps every day. And I like to exercise. I mean, and by the way, I'm a very lazy person. And when it comes to exercise, I need to find a way to enjoy it. So sometimes I'll go to a class. If someone's yelling at me, telling me what to do, it's probably good. Or if I'm with a friend, somebody tell me what to do and I'll just do it. And I know that always helps me feel better. So those things, and also I have great friends, I should say. I have such great friends who are such great listeners, who give such good advice. And so I like being open with the people around me.
And you live in Toronto, so you have no choice but to walk because driving gets you nowhere in this city. So.
Yeah.
Are you in Hamilton or in Toronto?
I'm back and forth, but I'm in Toronto right now.
Okay. But you live home is in Hamilton still, correct?
Toronto
I'll
right
walk
now,
to a
but I was in
coffee
Hamilton
shop
for
and
very,
meet
very
you
long.
someday.
Okay.
And we'll have a coffee and we can share your Globe and Mail. I would like that.
You know, it's funny. People come up to me and go, I see you walking around all the time. And I go, this is what happens when you don't have a real job.
No one
I'm
even
just
says
walking
anything to
around.
me. They probably just look at me like a very odd lady who's, talking to my dog. They're thinking, who's she talking to? Anyway, thank you for your pearls of wisdom. Congratulations on the book. It's an amazing feat. It's a lot of work to do a book. It's not easy. And we'll see you again. Thanks for coming on the show and being so awesome.
No, thank you. No, thanks for having me. This is a total pleasure.